Hello, and welcome back to our Social Capital series. In this session, I have a career conversation with Samantha Karpiloff. Samantha is an associate director here in Career and Professional Development, and in this recording, she talks to me about her career journey to date and shares some real stories about how she successfully used her social capital to advance her career. This was a particularly fun one for me because, as you'll learn, I've known Samantha for about a decade, and I've seen firsthand how she has navigated various phases of her career. Her story is chock full of little takeaways about putting yourself out there, keeping relationships alive, and trying out some different careers that her psychology major prepared her for. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. This session is being offered as part of our Fall 2024 Career Academy series. Today, I'm here to introduce you to the topic of social capital. Throughout the rest of the series, you'll hear stories from members of the career team at Mercy about how their social capital helped them achieve milestones in their careers. We all know firsthand how important connections are when it comes to career success, and I can't wait for you to hear some of these wonderful stories that we have to share with you. After you watch a Career Academy session, make sure you take the quiz on our website to earn your credit for that session. If you watch at least 4 sessions and submit those quizzes, you'll earn a digital badge at the end of the semester that you can list on your resume and share on LinkedIn if you wish. All badge earners will be entered into our iPad raffle, and we'll draw that name the week of December 9th, so get those quizzes in by December 5th if you want to be included in the raffle. All right, hello and welcome to another career chat with one of our career team members. My name is Lynn Leese. I'm the Director of Career Education here at Mercy University. And today I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with Samantha Karpiloff, who is an Associate Director on our team, about a little bit about her career progression and specifically how her community helped her get where she is today. So Samantha, welcome to the Zoom room.
Thank you, Lynn. Very glad to be here.
So I'd love it if you could just start off by telling folks a little bit about who you are, introduce yourself, and what you do here on the career team.
Absolutely, sure. So my current role in the career team, like Lynn mentioned, as associate director, is one of the leadership roles, since that's the tier on our team that is kind of designated for that. And I have a few different sides to what I do. So one side is being a career coach for the business and accounting career community, which of course is focused on students who want to go into those career paths, not necessarily someone majoring in those areas, but obviously a good chunk of the group is dedicated to those folks. And I actually co-lead that with our colleague Drew. So that's been great to collaborate with him there. And what that entails really is meeting with students in one-on-one appointments, of course, but also going into classrooms to speak to them, whether about our EPIC program or to lead career education workshops, and also to host events for their benefit, as well as an advisory board that I have the pleasure of leading with Drew. So there's a lot of education-related stuff related to that sector of the role. And then another side of what I do is managing the marketing function for our team, and that typically looks like flyers for our events, but it has really expanded over the couple of years that I've been in this role. I think as of July 2022 is when I got here, which is hard to believe so much time has flown by. And it now includes things like continually publishing our content on Instagram, which is the main social media channel that we use for now, and making sure that we have content around other messaging and initiatives that we're pushing out. So things like our soon-to-be system for connecting students and alumni, helping out with that, but as well as just messages that go up on our digital signs across campus to make sure students are being reminded of things we want them to keep in mind, like starting early in their career and looking for internships. So it's been really a pleasure to grow that from where it was before I took over that part of my role. And I also, within that too, lead or manage a student employee who helps me with some of the work on the ground, so to speak, for that. And then also in the realm of management, I manage a full-time staff member, Sharon, one of our colleagues as well, and help guide her in her goals and her trajectory here on the team. So I really do have discovered through this role too that I enjoy managing people and acting in a leadership capacity, which I've had the opportunity to dabble with prior to, which I'm sure I'll get into prior to this role. But this role, of course, obviously requires that, but I think I also just have a really natural knack for that, so to speak. So that's been great to experience a little bit more. And then one more thing I'll share is that I have made an effort over the course of my time at Mercy to do some research on resources for veteran students and try to engage with them a little bit more, which I'd like to do more of going forward, but that's a population that is also really close to my heart.
Yeah, and we do that on the team, sort of. Everybody works to ensure that we have resources and are just sort of a welcoming space for the different populations of students. So really happy to have you sort of be our veterans liaison as much as it is. And can I just sort of back you up a little bit? I know you mentioned July 2022, and I think what you meant is assuming the current role that you're in. Can you just talk a little bit about your time at Mercy when you joined? And I know you've progressed a little bit since you've been here, which might be fun to hear about.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. There's been quite a journey since I started on the career team in November 2019. So we're recording now in October. It will be literally, I think, a month from this Friday, my 5-year anniversary, which
Oh,
is very wild because it feels like a lot longer than that with all the change that we've experienced and all the
that's true.
different things that I've done. Yeah. But I started as a career specialist, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but I discovered or heard about that role through you. And what that really entailed was kind of similar to actually what our student employees mainly do in the career education side these days, acting as like front desk administrative and operations support, and then on the side also being a career coach for our now media, communications, and technology community alongside someone else on the team at the time. So it was, again, as our roles on the team, on the career ed team, are divided up into this project area and career coach area. I had that when I started in that role as well. And I was so thrilled to find out about the role and land it. There's a story that I want to make sure to tell about how that happened, and I'll make sure to get to that later. But
Okay, well,
that
bookmark
really
it.
was, sure, yeah.
Sure.
That was really a game changer for me because I had experience as a student when I was in college and working in my alma mater's career center, and then having had experience also in HR before I came to Mercy, and knowing that I wanted to get back to a counseling like role eventually. It was just such a thrill and a relief really to be able to have that so early on in my career, because I had only been working for a couple of years by the time I had discovered that role. And so after, I'll keep moving forward here, after being a career specialist, I think it was for maybe a year and a half or a little more than that, I was able to apply for an assistant director position on our team and got promoted into that. And that's when I started working with students in the human services community, has a longer title. But I also co-led that community with another member of our team. And so I've kind of been around the block with working with different groups of students at Mercy, being the designated coach for those folks. And at that time, I think my side projects were along the lines of marketing, but also helping, mainly focused on helping with our EPIC initiative, career education embedded into classes. And so at the time, I think you were the one who was leading that, and I was supporting on data management and other faculty needs as they came up. So I had a few different things going on. And then at some point along the way, I should know this better, I transitioned to the business and accounting career community. So I don't remember exactly what transpired there. I should probably be more prepared now to recall that. But I ended up being the career coach for that group and kind of brought that with me when I moved into the associate director role at the Westchester campus. So yeah, I've seen a lot of things. It's been quite a wild ride at times, but also really enjoyable. And I'm so appreciative of all the opportunities I've had because I feel like I really know Mercy and how our team works, and better than I ever have because of that.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and we reflect on this, often off camera too. But you joined almost right before COVID lockdown
Yeah.
happened, right? And so it was such an interesting few years for you because I think every workplace has this, and higher ed in particular, where it's like you've got these sort of not stagnant, but you've got long stretches of time where you're like learning your role. You don't always have these opportunities to just quickly move up, and then sometimes they happen. And I think, the whole workforce experienced this kind of turnover and real period of change with the onset of COVID. And so we just, vacancies kept happening and opportunities to shuffle projects. And all of that just kept happening. And so it's been like very much a whirlwind for you here. But, you know, you had this period of just opportunity kept opening up and you kept taking advantage of it. So I thought, you know, I think it's helpful to hear kind of sometimes just be ready when those things drop in your lap or open up in front of you.
That's right. That's advice you
Great.
continually gave me. And I just want to plug you for a second because I don't think I would have gone for those gone for those promotions had you not encouraged me to, since you weren't my manager at the time, but you were still, of course, really close. And that's another takeaway that I'll share probably at the end of our
Yes,
chat
we
here.
can
But
we can
yeah,
follow the story. That's
yeah,
totally get where you're going.
yeah.
So I think maybe would it make sense then to sort of back up and talk a little bit about your journey to Mercy from maybe I don't know where you want to start, but like is it college to sort of landing here?
Yeah, I can start back in Manhattanville. And that is where we met too, which is really the underlying theme to this whole story that I'll go into. But as a student starting college, I really actually wanted to become a journalist and I loved to write. And that passion, I guess you could call it, developed from being in my school newspaper in high school and also really having a knack for English. Or I loved everything and anything about being creative there, which I think kind of plays into the marketing side of my role today, which is nice. And I ended up discovering that I actually didn't want to work for media outlets, which looking at how things are run today, I'm very thankful for. And instead, being able to be creative in my own way, kind of like I said, with the opportunity I have through the marketing side of my role now is something I really enjoy. But based on research I did and things that I heard from people, it didn't seem like the opportunity for that was going to exist in the media realm. So I knew that if I could have that as part of my job someday, I'd love that, but I didn't necessarily want it to be the focus. So I switched to psychology and I really wanted to pursue counseling. I felt that in life, I had been that kind of person to friends in my circle, and then even through working as a student employee at I think it was called the CCD instead of CPD, Center for Career Development at Manhattanville, I felt like those things were combining to show like this is something that I had a natural knack for, and that I wanted to use those strengths and talents in some way if I could in the future. And after being a student employee for, I think it was probably 3 years at the Career Center, I had approached, I think, our director at the time, I think it was Shannon, who I first talked to, and asked her about the opportunity to potentially be an intern with the team in the future if there was any kind of, if that dream could come to fruition in any way. And sure enough, she, I think it was from her direction, ended up allowing me to do that my junior year, my spring semester junior year. And it was really because I knew that I wanted to be a counselor, but also really wanted to experience, and I know it's difficult to experience being like a guidance counselor or any type of other counselor once you go to grad school. So if I had the opportunity to experience what it was like to do that when I was an undergrad, I'd love that. And thankfully I did. And you were my manager for that internship, which was awesome. And so cool to think that that was our first like manager employee relationship, and look where we are now. It's just, oh my gosh, wow, wow. Um, but through that internship, really the focus was to get a little experience working with students in the way that I do now with very basic things like having an introductory conversation on career exploration, an introductory resume review, and really pointing them to resources on the website for the Career Center at the time that they might have not been aware of. So it was very basic stuff, but I was so gung-ho to do any of it. I was so thrilled to be able to meet with students one-on-one in that way and kind of like this walk-in, drop-in hours situation. And that really showed me that I felt this type of counseling or coaching, so to speak, was the most fulfilling really because I was helping people with a major step in their lives. And I know that can be said for probably a lot of areas of counseling, but this just felt more permanent and real. And if I had the opportunity to do that someday, I would love to. So that kind of solidified what my goals would be, I think, from that internship, really. And all the experience I had prior to that, working as a student employee to lead to that. And so when I was in my senior year, I was considering like, okay, if I want to do this, I have to go to grad school. Like, there's no question about that. And so I was again, kind of between being a counselor in that sense of working at a higher education institution and in the career space. And then I was also between being a school guidance counselor in like a public school, maybe for high school. And I think I had at least one other shadow opportunity to go to a high school and see what it was like for the guidance counselors there to be in their role on a day-to-day basis. So I had a little exposure to what that would include. But I knew grad school was going to be necessary. And so I had that realization my last year of college. And I was like, well, I think I should get some experience first before I absolutely commit myself, because I know that this is the path for me, that I want to help people in that way. But I'm not sure I'm ready to put tons of money and time behind grad school. And so I'm going to just start by working in a job. And thankfully, I was able to find one through a professor of mine through an HR class that I took. And I actually am still in touch with her to this day, which is another networking story. I can share it at another time. But she's the one who really introduced me to to human resources in general, because it was the first class that I had taken on that subject, and then to the company that I eventually worked at in my first job called Operations Inc. They're a HR consulting company in Connecticut. And I worked there for about a year and a half after I graduated, which was a wonderful experience to get so many different sides of how a business is run and how human resources works under my belt, because they are unique in the sense that their company obviously is focused on HR. And so everyone there has a lot of experience being a consultant. There's so much to learn from other people who have had years in the industry doing so many different projects and so many different things. And then as someone who is an employee of that company, you are a consultant, of course. That means that you are being asked to do a variety of different projects for different businesses of all sizes. It could be like a small mom and pop shop up to like a huge major firm. And I also got a lot of exposure to different things within HR because of that. So learned a lot during my time there. And I like to think even to this day, I carry some of that, even though I wasn't working there for too long. I carry some of that into the guidance that I give students and appointments and working with them. So thankfully, that kind of helps inform me working with students in the business and accounting field, to be able to give them that real world experience that I had. And, after having been there for, even though again, it was a relatively short amount of time, I had kept in touch with you, and I was really interested to see what was going on with your world. Because I think the last time that we had really spoke and caught up was right before you had moved on to Mercy from Manhattanville, and that was during my junior year, I remember. And so I had another year at Manhattanville, and then I started working full time, and we had touch base again. I think maybe it was like a year or a year and a half later. And you told me about this job that I had just spoke about as a career specialist on the team. And you said it's very entry level, but if you're looking to get into this space, then you should apply. And of course I did. There was no question about that. I was absolutely going for it. I mean, first of all, to even like hear about a possibility to work in that role in an entry level way was so awesome. And then to hear about the opportunity close to where I lived and to work with you, it's like no brainer. Obviously, I'm going to apply. And so I did. And a quick story on that too is that I later learned that I was the last one to be interviewed for that position. I had come in like right at the very end.
That I didn't
And
remember. I was not part of the interview process for that. Other folks were managing that. I did not remember that. That's funny.
I know. And
Me too,
again,
the
it's
last
just very
second.
wild that I kind of snuck in. Yeah. Right at the end there. And I also had the opportunity, by the way, to work with other colleagues from Manhattanville who I had kind of worked with Shannon, the director of our team at the time. And then, of course, being a student employee, I had seen her there and talked with her. And then there was another colleague of ours, Joy, who still works at Mercy to this day, who I knew as well. So I kind of felt like coming into a team of people, not just one person, but people that I already were familiar with, which was really comforting in and of itself. So that's what happened with that.
That's an amazing story. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about these connections, but there's so much about that story that I think is so valuable as students think about their careers, right? I mean, you were a psychology major, which is one of those really, really broad majors that can take you in so many directions, right? in truly so many. And you already are talking about 3 different ones that you explored over your time there, which are like clinical counseling fields, educational coaching fields, human resources, right? There's so many paths that can take. I think the fact that you did your best to explore each of them, experience each of them. I mean, guidance counseling, school counseling is the hardest one. You'd really have to go through that grad program, but to really start exploring those opportunities and getting whatever kind of exposure you can to the field was really valuable to you. And at the end of the day, you got some work experience in 2 different directions and really got to kind of know what was a good fit for you. I think having that connection with your professor, we talk to students a lot about, networking is really important. Building those connections outside of the university is really important, but it starts here. You've got faculty and staff and folks that you're working with just on the regular who could be that connection for you. And so having that connection to a professor who felt good enough about you to help you connect you into a job, right? And who you keep in touch with to this day. I love hearing that. So yeah, I think there's so much about the sort of success of figuring it out, right? And that you didn't have it all figured out to begin with. And even that first direction that you took out of college ended up not being quite the right fit for you, but finding sort of the transferable skills and, the different experiences that you had that connect you back into that job, I think are all, we talk to students about these things in theory, right? But this is all of that in action. So I think it's such a good story. So I know you've got some great stories to tell also about the specific connections that you made that sort of helped you with these different milestones. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about whichever ones you want to share.
Sure, and thank you for saying all that. One thing I will say off of what you just said first is that there's, of course, a lot of takeaways from really any networking story, but I think something that I repeat to students often in appointments when I meet with them is that even when you get your first job, you're figuring it out. And frankly, that's true throughout one's career in general. It's not even like, oh, you get your first job and you figure out that you like this and you're not good at this, and then you find the perfect job that is your second job. It's obviously not like that. And so I think something the students tell me is that they are concerned that this is not the perfect internship for them, or it doesn't meet this criteria and this and this. I'm like, it's not going to be checking every box. And it's going to teach you what you are good at, what you're not good at, and what you do like and what you don't like, just like every experience, whether it's an internship or not, will throughout your professional life. So that was also what I went through in that first job working in HR, was learning like, oh, this is the kind of manager that I would hope for, or this is the kind of, work-life balance that I'd like, or this is the kind of, value that I have that I didn't realize I have because I'm now going through X thing. So that also was a lot of learning from even just being in a first job without having to feel like I needed to be absolutely prepared for that, or it had to be an exact match for who I was.
Yeah.
But on to what you asked, which was a story, a story about someone who I guess has helped me successfully navigate my career and advance in my career. And so I know I mentioned a few folks from what I just said who came to Mercy, but I'd like to focus on you, which is really putting you in the spotlight.
I did not plant her, I promise.
Yeah. She's not paying me.
I mean, we are, but it's a salary.
Yes, right. Indirectly, it's not paying me. And I want to share it because it really was, from my career so far, the most pivotal, I guess, example for how I was able to pivot into a desired role that I had envisioned for myself when I was a student. And so, because I knew you and we had worked together in the ways that we did, it was like you were the gateway to me being able to have a job here. And obviously, me putting myself through the interview and applying is separate from you sharing the opportunity with me. But had I not heard about it from you, I would have never known to apply. So giving you lots of flowers there for introducing me to Mercy in that first role. But when we had worked together, I wanted to kind of explain that a little bit more at Manhattanville. So you had been my internship supervisor, but then at certain points, I'm sure during my time as a student employee, you had given me advice or direction, maybe not as a manager, because I remember being under someone else there, but you also kind of had that perspective of having seen me on the job as a student employee in the Career Center. And then another angle to come at is also from having been my career counselor at certain points, because I remember meeting with you, of course, and having that relationship built. So we had a lot of pre-existing work that we've done together, which of course I like to think has helped us in our relationship now, but also allowed you to like have a strong sense of what my goals were and what I was after and the, ideal job that I wanted to have someday. And so that really helped direct you to tell me about this position at Mercy. And I would think, and you can maybe speak on this better than I can, but I would think, was helpful in determining the decision to hire that person into the career specialist role, which I'm extremely grateful for, obviously.
Yeah, and there's so much about all of that that I think is so directly applicable to kind of what we're hoping students take away from this series, right? Like there's the pre-existing relationship to begin with. And so that, obviously it's a little bit different for us because when you first walk in the door, you're coming to a career counselor. Our first relationship was a counseling one. And so you were looking for me to support your career in some capacity, right? You weren't necessarily expecting that I would like hand over a job, but it was a career conversation. But I think, there beyond that, we sort of clicked as people, and you proved yourself also, right? So we talk about like reputation. So we had that counseling relationship. We had that managerial relationship through the internship. You had a managerial relationship with someone else in the office who ended up also being in a hiring capacity here when that time came. And you don't always know those things, right? Like we're talking about a student employment job on campus that is there to build some skills and make some money, but you don't always realize that like the person you're reporting to in that moment could in 3 or 4 years be in a position to hire full-time staff. And that could be you if you've proven yourself, right? And I think from day one, I mean, you should really be giving credit to your approach as well. From day one, you came in, you had like done your research, you had this list of questions, you were extremely prepared. And that has defined, I think, how you operate as a person and an employee and a coach. And so when the time came, certainly I felt very comfortable putting your name in, right, and giving you a reference because I knew how you operated. And I felt comfortable attaching my name to that. But also the people who were in a position to hire also had a proof of your work history, right? And so this is what we talk about with students is like, the more you can get in front of somebody and prove that you are a responsible person, prove that you can get the job done, and show your personality and make those connections, that's how you get in front of somebody for a hire eventually, right? And we also talk about cultivating your network too. And it doesn't have to be disingenuous. It doesn't have to have this sort of end agenda in mind of I'm going to keep this person in front of me because eventually they will get me a job. That's not why you periodically reached out and said, hey, let's get dinner, or what are you up to? I mean, we had created an allyship, right? We enjoyed each other's company. We found each other, like good colleagues to work with. We had that relationship. And so periodically, even after I left and you graduated, you were like, hey, let's get together and let's have dinner. And I'd love to pick your brain and let's see where we are. And ultimately down the line, that meant that I had you in the forefront of my mind. And so those are the kinds of stories, right, that we talk about. It's not that you were sitting there going, I'm going to make sure that I reach out to Lynn once a month because eventually she's going to connect me to a job. It was genuinely a connection that we wanted to keep alive. But it resulted in a job. So, and a few promotions, right? So I think it is a really good story about how you authentically brought people into your circle and then stayed present for them, right, in a genuine way, and then magical things happened later. So it's a great story.
Magical. Yeah, magical is a great word. And I mean, you're kind of quoting some of the things I've said slash written in other Career Academy series that we've
Mhm.
had at other points. One was about your first job in your field and how important managing one's relationship with their manager is, and so that's along the lines of absolutely some of the things you just mentioned. And you also pointed out something that I probably didn't realize, which is just by doing a good job and like caring about having a good quality of work and with the people that you work with, that has a ripple effect on other people that you work with who could eventually influence your career in the future, and you just never know. So I think it really just does start with caring about doing a good job and being there, even if it's a position like, thankfully, the example I'm giving is a job that I really liked in terms of being an intern and also student employee at the Career Center at Manhattanville. But even when it's a position that you think is just like a summer job or this is a passing thing or you don't necessarily care about it, I remember being told as I grew up too by family as well as my parents that treated every single job like gold because for all the reasons you just gave, really never know, but also just to make sure that you're doing your best so that you can set yourself up for the best in the future, whatever it might be, an opportunity in terms of working or, connecting with someone again for something else. You have no idea. So might as well give it your best effort.
It's so true. And in that early career period where we were interacting, that was for me sort of earlier in my career too. I supervised 20, 30 student employees over those years. And the ones that I saw get these really prestigious internships over time and get multiple job offers when they were graduating were those students that also treated my entry level, kind of like answering phones, data entry student job as the best job they ever had and the most important job they ever had, right? And they just really brought themselves to it. And you can tell that that's the approach everywhere they go. And I think it's so true. And it's just, I think tying it to the education is important because when we talk to students about what we know works, we know this from experience, right? It's not just that we're reading articles and talking to employers. We are, but we're living proof of how these things work for us. So I think, yeah, it's so incredible. And not to plug all of those workshops that Samantha's done, but there are recordings of her on the website giving advice based on experience if you want to go check them out. So yeah, very good point.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, and one more thing I wanted to add, by the way, about I think why this was so successful was not just because of the rapport that we had built from all these different roles that you had served, I guess, above me. Um, but it was also because you are an extremely caring person and very much a mentor figure. So once again, throwing a compliment back at you, which I have heard from other students, they have been able to spot by even like talking to a professor after class and showing that they have, a little bit of care in the subject that they're learning, or someone who they met at a conference and who offered to keep in touch with them. I mean, the very same stories that I hear from them have been what I've seen with you too, with just some people are out there ready to help people in along their career path, and you just never know also when like you might find those people, but also take advantage of when someone does offer to assist, because there are a lot of people, and I would say most professionals, especially when it comes to using LinkedIn, do want to give back and do want to help. And so if you latch onto that and don't take advantage of that, in I guess a bad way, but in a good way, then you just never know how that can set you up for success. It doesn't have to be immediately, but later down the road.
Yeah, and I think that's at the core of when we talk about like these relationships can be authentic, right? That's what we mean. People care about helping each other. People share passions about things that they can connect around, and that's how you start to build that circle for yourself. And eventually down the line that can yield something. But if you don't come at it from a how many connections am I going to make to get me a job perspective and more of a who am I going to find that cares about some things that I care about, who has an interest in helping me, who I might be able to help, and we sort of build little communities where we're all helping each other, right? Get a leg up. That then you have these just people in your corner, right? That's what we mean about making it authentic. It doesn't have to be this sort of salesman-y kind of slick, disingenuous thing that I think so many people feel about networking. It really is just like finding your people.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, and latching onto them. It's
Yeah.
like you're reading off some of the notes that I have here because one
Oh,
of the
I'm
things I
sorry.
said
It is a
was,
conversation that you are leading, and we get excited. We talk. This is what we do.
yeah,
Yes, tell
that's
me more.
quite all
You brought
right.
notes in.
Yeah,
What else do you want to say about this story?
that's all right. I have also been throwing it back at you plenty of times during our chat here, so it's quite understandable. But you said it before, which is, I think, just the main takeaway was keeping your relationships alive and how to go about that. And what we did, like you said, was very genuine and just checking in with each other on the phone. It doesn't even have to be like, going out for dinner, although we've also enjoyed that at times, or having anything formal kind of on the calendar. It can just be like checking in on a phone call, which is, I think is what happened when I found out about this job. The first job that I had on the team at Mercy was we had just called each other as I was driving home from work one day. And I was catching up on what was happening in my world, and then you told me about this job opening. And so it can be, and it ends up being very organic and natural without having to force anything. Um, and I would say the other takeaway that kind of plays into that is that it doesn't always have to be what you also said when you need something from the other person. Without thinking about when the time comes for a new job opportunity or a new internship, if you're currently a student, it doesn't always have to be when you need advice or when there's, a difficult situation that you're handling. There's like an urgent ask. These relationships and how they're built is through things like, hey, do you want to just take a look at this article that I found that I thought you'd be interested in? Or I'm wondering if you just wanted to catch up on what's been going on in your professional world. I had some questions about X, Y, and Z. And it is very natural when you kind of get into a rhythm of having a relationship with that person. And so that's how relationships are built, and that's how people are able to kind of move the needle in their careers through just being themselves and having people kind of reciprocate that as a result.
It's such a good takeaway.
But thank you. You've taught me a lot. And that's one of the things.
I wanted to see if there's anything. I know that is such a good bow on the conversation, but is there anything that you didn't get to share about sort of leveraging connections, or what you think you did in those, moments that was so successful, or any other final kind of word of advice to students?
Sure. I think just me being, I suppose, with the story that I shared, proof of how long relationships can go on for. I mean, I met you when I was a student in my freshman year at undergrad in Manhattanville, and we've had a relationship now for 10 years, which is just
Wild.
mind-blowing. Wild. And so along the lines of what we both of us had talked about with how genuine it can and should be to keep in touch with people in your circle. I mean, I haven't felt necessarily like I have made, I guess, unnatural efforts to do what we do here. It's just been very natural over the course of time to chat with you, also because you kind of make that environment for anyone that is in your circle and that you talk with. But it's just been a very natural thing to let this go on. And so it's like the time has flown by without me having to count the months or years. It's just how sometimes, a really close relationship can foster by being oneself. And so I think kind of just repeating what I had said at the end there about the main takeaway with how important it is to not make I guess unnatural efforts in trying to meet people and expand your network. Sometimes it could feel that way if you are, for example, applying to an internship and really want to have it in by finding a recruiter on LinkedIn and messaging them. But other times there are other ways to go about finding opportunities just by being yourself and being natural with who you already know, and people can introduce you to other people as well. So I think just again nailing the point of being natural, how that and being yourself can lead to success, having a successful career with through the people that you know is really the thing that I want to leave students with.
I love it. Yes, be yourself, put yourself out there, show your passion. It will be returned, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you sum it up well.
Samantha, do you want to plug the Instagram?
Oh, well, thank you for that prompt. I absolutely do. Yes, please follow us at Mercy Careers on Instagram, and hopefully we'll expand to other socials in the future, but that's where we are for now. We push out content all the time on our stories. I'm sure if you follow us already, you've seen that. But we will also be every semester when we have a career fair or a campaign for that fair will precede it. And so please check out posts that we have leading up to those events, since we'll be posting every day, especially for this semester speed networking event. And thank you in advance for following us.
Thank you so much for all of your wisdom today and sharing your story with students. I think, hearing how these things play out in real time, real life, whatever you want to call it, is so valuable. Samantha Karpiloff is an associate director in career and professional development. She works on our Westchester campus in Main Hall 247A, just above the library. Please feel free to come drop by. You can find her schedule on Handshake if you'd like to schedule an appointment with her, and you can find her and the rest of the team in any Vitale Career Hub on any of our 3 campuses. Thank you, Samantha, so much again for sharing your wisdom with us, and take care.
Thank you.
That's all for this session. Be sure to visit the Career Academy website to take your quiz and get credit for watching this session. I hope you ace it, but your score won't affect your attendance. You just need to submit the quiz to get credit for the session towards your digital badge and your entry into the iPad raffle. If you want to follow up on anything discussed today, email us at cpd@mercy.edu or find your career coach's Handshake link on our website. And do me a favor and give us a follow on Instagram. We're pushing out fun, educational content all the time, so don't miss a thing.